So no matter where you go in the world, if you had a device to receive GPS signals, you would know where you are. Well, that means that there's literally no place on earth that you could test uh, a person who was not exposed to EMF. We have a lot of people now that are driving electric cars, and yet they're looking for something to protect them from the EMF of their cell phone, but they're driving an electric car. Well, the electric car has a battery that's a magnitude larger than the phone battery.
Greetings. This is Martin Patella. This is Life Enthusiast Health Shots podcast. And today I have a special treat for you, meeting with my co-producer, Scott Patton, but especially Fred Kaufman. Fred is the chief soul of product line called Balancer. We'll talk about it some more. But preamble, we'll be recording this for our exclusive group of members. This is not for public consumption. This is for only those of you who are on the inside, private and confidential, because we'll be saying things that are commercially non-viable. All right? With that,
all right.
Fred is a man who walks with faith. It will be peppered through his talk. Don't panic. It's well earned. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Martin.
Oh, no worries. We all have had our encounter with the ineffable, with the transcendent, and with the eternal. It just is different ways how we may approach it, but we all touch it. Oof.
Yes. So, how are you doing, Martin?
Life is good. And
Life is good.
I went looking for the most recent version of your product, which comes in, well, used to come like this, except now it's a little different looking, and used to come like this, and now it's different looking.
I have one.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, but just because there's a product, let's not panic about that. Oh, there it is. That's the newer version.
Yeah, so this is the newer one with the flap instead of the snap.
Right on.
I'll put the flap back in there so you can see it better.
Well, show us the inside.
It has a little lanyard that goes on the top, so you can attach it to your belt or something, so you don't lose it. But I just put mine in my pocket, so I don't really tie it onto anything. So I took the lanyard off. But that's what it looks like. Yeah. It's a suede cloth pouch, and the Balancer itself is rather unique. I don't know of any other product in the world that's quite like it. It's really,
yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
maybe show the back of it.
Yes, it looks like I took this little plastic bag and filled it with water, put it in the freezer, and when it was frozen, then smacked it on the counter and broke it into 1,000 pieces. But it's actually very soft and squishy. It's like a gel. All of these little angles, all of these little lines and ridges, all of those actually are important. I won't get into details, but I had someone point out to me that it looks like a fractal antenna. Right. And so I don't know, but we used to have the round beads like you were showing.
Yeah.
And we found this material and started using it and found it to be a little bit more powerful.
All right. So let's talk about the power. The most important thing, why are we here, is we're talking about this because this changes lives in a big way. And what it does, it affects water, which is what we're mostly made out of or filled with. And well, I'll start straight from esoteric. To me, water is the memory device of nature. In water, because of its polar nature, we create these latent liquid crystals. And those liquid crystals remember things. They remember vibrations. They especially remember emotions, thoughts, and all of the stuff that happens to us. And
Yeah.
homeopathy is based on that. If you talk to a homeopath, they tell you that they can take water as a storage medium and through succussion and dilution can retain a vibration of a thing in the water while the concentration is beyond the Avogadro's number, beyond the detectable limit of any one thing. So I can tell you that after I do the homeopathic process, there's nothing in the product, and yet it remembers what was in it originally. That's
Yes.
why I'm bringing it up. Water
Yeah.
will remember things.
And the really cool thing is that while we knew that and understood that, for myself, it started back in the mid '90s, and I was completely blown away that the energetic testing of distilled water showed that all the chemicals that had been taken out were still there. The energy, the frequencies were still there. And then we got
Wow.
double distilled medical grade water, and it was the same thing. That might be curious to some people, but as you pointed out, Martin, your body responds to homeopathic energy just the same as if that original herbal extract or chemical was still in the water.
Yeah.
Your bodies are responding a lot more to frequency than we ever dreamed. And now we're starting to experience the results of having an increase in energy. We're talking about this in the human body, this natural energy that the acupuncturists talk about. I wondered for 40 years, where does that come from? Having read numerous research papers, having met people who practice acupuncture, never got an explanation beyond you were born with it. And that just wasn't acceptable. I thought everything that your body needs, it has to replenish. You need vitamin C every day. We're the only animal besides, I think, guinea pigs, maybe a couple others, that don't synthesize vitamin C. So we have to get it externally every day. So the reason is because your body utilizes vitamin C in a lot of processes. Well, if you're not getting um, uh, vitamin C, what happens? You become deficient in vitamin C. And we know with the story of the British sailors who were nicknamed limeys because they figured out that scurvy, this disease that could actually be deadly, was not really a disease at all. It was a deficiency. It was a vitamin C deficiency. So what if we need this energy? What if we have to have this energy, that this energy is involved with a lot of processes? And this became the center point of my work with energy was, could we duplicate, could we reproduce this natural energy that the body has? So that's the lead-in story to the balancer. I in 2017, I was sitting on the couch, and this was part of my spiritual journey that you mentioned. I'm just sitting there minding my own business, watching something interesting on the television, and just relaxing. And suddenly I had this formula in my head. And I got up, I went to my uh, supply room, and I started putting this formula together. One try. I didn't experiment for months and months. It was one try putting this formula together. And I came to my wife and I said, look, I've got this new high energy liquid. It's designed to hold the energy indefinitely. And being my lovely wife and supporter for now 29 years, she said something that was very helpful to me. She said, so what are you going to do with it? And this is the inspiration for a lot of inventions, is a loving wife saying, so what are you going to do with it? And 3 days later, I came up with a little necklace pendant. And my thought process was, if you would wear this necklace, it would give your body energy. Your body would actually absorb the energy that was contained within this little metal pendant, and that it would somehow start adjusting. It would start doing things that couldn't be done in any other way, other than just having this energy increased. Skipping forward, 3 weeks later, I introduced them at a meeting where I was actually introducing other formulas. I only spent a few minutes talking about this little pendant, and I said that it would um, help protect you from EMF. After the meeting, there was a nurse who purchased the very first uh, little necklace, and she came up to me after 15 minutes and she said, "I have a testimony about your pendant."
Hmm.
I thought that was very interesting, and I wondered, how does she know that this is protecting her from EMF? And so I asked, "What happened?" She said something that just completely floored me. She said, "My bad shoulder cleared up." I had no
Wow.
way to anticipate that, but she had injured her shoulder a little over 4 months prior and probably needed surgery, as you might imagine. Her arm was virtually useless. She couldn't even pick up her grandbaby. And she said that in 15 minutes, all that was gone. And she started doing big circles with her arm, showing me that not only was the pain gone, but she had full rotation. About an hour later, she came back to me and she said, "I know for a fact it was the pendant because I took it off and gave it to my husband. And in 15 minutes, my pain came back. So I bought
Wow.
another one and I put that one on. And in 15 minutes, the pain was gone again." Okay, so that was the beginning of something that troubled me for 4 years. Maybe I should have made it bigger. And so I did. I'm sitting on my couch one day, the same couch, and I'm just relaxing, and all of a sudden I get this thought in my head, make a bigger one. So I made one that was literally 10 times bigger. And so the result of that was, for a year, I was passing them around to people. Excuse me, I'm slobbering, I guess. So after about a year of passing around hundreds of these things, about the size of a Sharpie pen, I was getting incredible testimonials. And I'm ready to bring it to market. And one night my wife said, "I need a hot pack." And so I went to the store and came back. I said, "Hey, they've got this really neat new hot pack. It's got squishy, rubbery beads in it that apparently have a liquid that freezes and heats." And she said, "Wouldn't it be cool if you could put your energy liquid in beads like that?" She didn't
Hmm.
really like the tube. She said it wasn't comfortable to carry in her pocket. And so 3 days later, I figured out how to do it. So that's what I showed you and Martin showed. This has developed over, yes, this has developed over the course of years, um, to where now we have this newer material. And as I said, it's just a very soft, squishy gel material. And you could fold it up, crunch it up, and it just comes right back to its regular shape. Um, we started having the most incredible testimonies I'd ever heard in my life from sending this little bead pack to people who were in real trouble. If you'll let me just tell you about one little story, this was pretty incredible. And as you said in the beginning, Martin, this affects water. We'll talk about in a minute the companion product called Waterworks, that are tubes that have the same material, have the same energy liquid, in just a different package. And we found when putting those on a water pipe, without touching the water, we've been able to now verify that we can purify water without touching it.
Yeah, you may as well
And
show it now, so people
you
don't
may show it.
wonder
Okay.
just what the heck you're talking about.
This is it.
So
Wow.
So
these are essentially plastic tubes with caps on the end, right?
yes, yes.
And you just
And
put it against the
it
the
has
pipe?
a Velcro strap, and there's a separate piece that you put on your pipe. It's got a peel and stick backing. It's a little bit longer than what you need, so you measure it and then cut it off to the right length. Stick it onto your pipe, and then you just simply press this against the pipe, and it wraps around the pipe and sticks.
Mm.
Okay, it's so simple, so easy. A 10-year-old could do it in 5 minutes. It's really that simple.
Yeah, the good thing about this deal is that you don't have to cut into the pipe. You just wrap it
Exactly.
around it.
Yes. We're
Yeah.
the only one that I know of that can structure water without touching it. And this is pretty impressive by the standards in the marketplace right now. As you know, you have been marketing treatment devices for
Oh,
many,
yeah.
many years.
Here's an example, beads inside the water vessel.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that has little balls inside of it, and it's supposed to vortex the water. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of different ways that people have come up with, but I think I'm the first one that has been able to achieve these results without touching the water. But back to the little balancer, I had came across a phone number one day of a man I hadn't talked to in 14 years. He was a big businessman, and he he and I had talked before about bottling one of my other formulas, and it didn't work out. I hadn't talked to him all these years, and I came across his number and thought, I'm going to call him and see if he survived COVID. And he could barely whisper when he answered the phone. And I said, "What's wrong?" His name was Keith. I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I'm dying." And I thought, wow, what do you say to somebody that can barely whisper and tell you they're dying? And he said, "What did you want?" And I said, I was calling to see if you could help me test this new little invention, this balancer. And he said, "Well, send me one." And I said, You've convinced me that you might die later today." I said, "I'm not going to send you one." I said, "I would just be wasting my money, wasting my time." And he convinced me to send it to him. Okay. He called me the next day after receiving it. Now, remember, he's in a, a dying situation. So he's in a hospice center. It was a chain of hospice centers in Michigan. And he told me after 20 seconds of having this on his body, he felt tingling in his paralyzed hand. Now, to give you a little bit of background, he had had not one but two strokes 10 years prior to this phone call, and he was paralyzed and had been for 10 years on the left side. On top of that, he had gone blind from complications of diabetes. And on top of that, his blood sugar was running 400 to 600 in spite of getting 3 and 4 insulin injections daily. So he was in pretty bad shape. And so he got this bead pack and he called and said, "I felt tingling in my hand. And today I'm exercising that once paralyzed hand with a spring loaded hand exerciser in the presence of a physical therapist." 3 days later, he called. He said, "I can see the hands of the clock on the wall." 10 days
Wow.
later, he called. He said, "I'm no longer paralyzed. I have full movement of all my joints." He said, "I just walked 21 steps unassisted." Now, imagine he's been completely paralyzed on the left side for 10 years. So it was a bit of a chore even to get reoriented to using his left side again. All right. So then 2 months later, he called me. He said, "Remember, I told you that my heart was only functioning at 10%. I said, "Yeah." He said, "I finally found out what was wrong." Excuse me. I don't know why I'm drooling. He said, "I found out from the doctor that my heart had a hole in one of the heart valves. Another valve wasn't closing, and another valve was clogged. That explained why it was only functioning at 10%. After 2 months of only having this little packet, that's all, laying on his chest, no other intervention, no supplements, no nothing. the doctor came in and said, your heart has healed itself. The hole in the heart valve is gone. The one that wasn't closing is closing. The one that was clogged is unclogging.
That's
In 5
amazing.
months, he was the first one ever sent home from this place, again, which is a chain of hospice centers. He was the first one to ever leave alive.
Wow. What a
So,
story that is, Fred. That's amazing.
yes, so you can see that I was encouraged, not just with his story, but there were many, many other ones. One that would really surprise you is a friend of mine, Nurse Bonnie. Nurse Bonnie is a retired neurosurgical nurse. She was also a holistic nurse, which is rare, board certified. And she's been a friend and tester of my products for over 25 years. So I sent her one of these interim tubes that I mentioned earlier. And then as time went by, I sent her the bead packs to be tested. All right. So she sends me a video one day, and it had a picture of her hand all bandaged up, and she had one of these tubes on the hand. And she texted the message, I had surgery on my hand to replace the knuckle that attaches the index finger to the hand. I'd never heard of such a thing. I've heard of knee replacements, hip replacements, even shoulder replacements. I've never heard of a knuckle replacement. She said, I was taking hydrocodone every 4 hours. And when I sent you that video, I wrote back to her and I said, wouldn't that bead pack be more comfortable? And she said, I forgot about it. I had it in my waistband because my lower back was hurting. The next day she called me. She said, I had to wait till today to find out if it was real. And I said, what happened? She said, I put that bead pack on the back of my bandage and taped it there so it wouldn't fall off. And in 15 minutes, all the pain was gone and never came back. A year later, she had a second knuckle replacement. I won't get into the details of why this was happening, but she had a second knuckle replacement. This time she came prepared. When her daughter picked her up from the hospital, she had 2 of the balancers in the glove box and a roll of tape. Other than the pain pill they gave her leaving the hospital, she never took anything. Now, this was one of those testimonials that really opened my eyes to what really is pain. Pain is not what we thought it was. Not to get sidetracked, but pain, in my experience, can be turned off. There are many products out there. I worked with an inventor who had a formula with menthol, a very high grade menthol concentrate. And there was another piece of the formula. I'm sorry, it escapes my memory right this moment. But the idea was it was this formula of 2 ingredients that were opposite of each other. One caused a cooling effect and one caused a heating, a capsation. He had from
chili pepper and menthol.
Yes, okay. So those 2 ingredients were opposites of each other. So what happened in this, when you sprayed, let's say you had a painful knee, when you sprayed your knee, the body was receiving 2 different sensations, 2 different signals that it responded to, but they canceled each other out. It couldn't entertain both opposite reactions at the same time. I thought that was a brilliant formula. It was one of the guys involved with the Armor All products. Okay, so what we're talking about now, though, is that pain can actually be turned off when the body perceives that it has what it needs to repair whatever's wrong. So we have a liquid mineral formula, and we found people could spray that on injuries and the pain would go away. Burns, even second-degree burns, the pain would go away in seconds.
Yeah, we're talking about fulvic acid, right?
Yeah, so how do you explain that? If you can see the injury, how come there's no pain? But the pain is a signal. It's like a fire alarm, and it's telling the brain, we need some raw materials. We know how to fix the damage, We know how to fix the problem. We just don't have the raw materials we need. And the brain scans the body, can't find them, so the pain signal stays on. The minute you get the ingredients, the nutrients that your body needs, it will turn off that pain signal. All right. So we've been experiencing that for nearly 30 years, 29 plus years. All right. But with this, the little balancer, to have people report after having a surgery, a joint replacement surgery, and being on hydrocodone, that in 15 minutes the pain stopped. You could see the hand was still swollen. The inflammation was there. The damage was there. The inflammation or the irritation of the nerves was still there. Why was there no pain? Because the body is going to respond not only to nutrients, but it also will respond to energy. Give you a case in point. The original necklace pendant that I mentioned, I found a couple of doctors that were willing to test it. They had developed a piece of electronic equipment that was measuring electrical activity in the body based on heart rate variability. So there was actually a medical background to this device, but it was an electronic device. I said, would you test these little necklace pendants? They like to focus on the autonomic nervous system. They said if you have an autonomic nervous system out of balance, there will be a cascade of problems throughout the body. So they focused on testing the balance of the autonomic nervous system. They would normally recommend a protocol for one of their patients. One was a chiropractor, one was a naturopath, formerly a medical doctor. They would recommend a protocol, and then after testing, then they would have the patient come back maybe in a week, 2 weeks, whatever, a follow-up visit to see what had changed. Did the protocol they suggested work? If not, they would make adjustments. This was kind of a fluke. They tested the patient after 30 minutes. They couldn't believe it. The autonomic nervous system was almost completely balanced. This is unheard of. Within 3 hours, they did another test and it was completely balanced. Well, just think about that for a minute. What would cause the autonomic nervous system to balance? We were just supplying this raw natural energy that the body already has. We're just giving an increase to that energy. So why would that happen? This is probably still a mystery even to me. I don't know if you've figured it out yet. But when you talk to somebody that has a bad shoulder, they go to an acupuncturist, they poke around some needles based on the premise that the energy is not flowing on the meridians to the shoulder. It's gotten blocked somehow, and the needles can help unblock it, get the energy flowing again. Oftentimes the pain goes away. So what is happening if we're able to bypass the needles? In other words, have we discovered acupuncture without the needles? And the reality is maybe we have, because when you see the other things that happen, it starts to complete a larger picture of how does the body really operate. So there are things that influence the energy in a positive way, but there are many things that influence this energy in a negative way. EMF, for example. We have a lot of people now that are driving electric cars, and yet they're looking for something to protect them from the EMF of their cell phone, but they're driving an electric car. Well, the electric car has a battery that's a magnitude larger than the phone battery. There's enormous amounts of EMF coming at you from an electric car. We have GPS. So no matter where you go in the world, if you had a device to receive GPS signals, you would know where you are. Well, that means that there's literally no place on earth that you could test a person who was not exposed to EMF. It's just not there anymore. We've all been exposed to it. By the same token, we've also had the effects of this energy on our water. And as you mentioned earlier, you're mostly water. 70% of your whole body is water. About 90% of your blood is just water. What kind of water? We can influence that water. And this may be one of the key principles of how this product works is by just simply influencing the water. So I'll pause for a minute if you have any questions. You want me to talk in a different direction?
You feel like saying something, Scott?
Well,
Pardon?
yeah, I was going to say, so we're surrounded in a soup of different radiations and microwaves and all the rest of it, which obviously impacts the water in our body, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we can negate that, that's awesome. And then we're also living in a physically toxic environment, whether it's the air we breathe that has mercury particles in it, or soot in it, or tire dust in it. So that's going to pollute the water because we breathe it in and it's going to end up in our system somewhere and have to be dealt with. Um, and I really liked what you said about homeopathy. So by having this, you're basically going to be able to help clean. And it was great what you said about the pipes, right? If you put this around the pipe, it's going to transform that water. So if we're able to clean the water, and here's something Martin and I talk about a lot, is, you need to have structured water because there's capillaries where it's one molecule of water. So if they're all clumped together, that's not going to work. So this sounds like a really amazing opportunity for people to take control of their health for, a lot less than, heart surgery to replace your heart and all the things that we do in our medical system.
Yeah, there was one point that I wanted to dwell on a little bit, which is the water we drink. Because most of drinking water in American cities comes from rivers. And it's the city upstream that picks up the water above and then drinks the whole thing, then pees it into their sewage, and then runs it through their sewage treatment and dumps it into that river. So the next city downstream is picking up water that has all of the electromagnetic or energetic vibrations of whatever happened with that water. Pharmaceuticals, chemicals, anger, and love, all of it put together. It's all in there energetically, right?
Yeah.
So when I pick up the next glass of water, the further downstream I am on the river system, the more likely I am to experience the collective, probably more negative than positive effects of all of the experiences that water has had.
So what if you lived in New Orleans?
What if?
Yeah. So you're exactly right. Now here's the
So tell me a New Orleans story.
pardon?
Tell me a New Orleans story.
Yes. So we had a situation with a chiropractor who became interested in our products and started promoting them. And it just so happened that his secretary, and they're probably, I'd say, 30 to 60 minutes outside of New Orleans. Um, they live in an area they call a parish. I think it's similar to a county.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for 3.5 years after moving into this home, her husband, and her 10-year-old daughter have been battling health problems. Nobody knows why. About the same time that I met this chiropractor, she had suspected maybe there was a problem with the water. So they had the water tested. It was loaded with bacteria. Further testing by the doctor who was caring for her 10-year-old daughter identified it was the same bacteria that was in her bladder causing recurring UTI infections. Imagine, if you will, go ahead.
The point being, the bacteria in the water that has been treated with chlorine. What we now have is bacteria that live and survive chlorination.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. They found after getting their water tested that the city or whoever's providing the water knows about the problem. And so they kept increasing the amount of disinfectant in the water.
Oh no.
Today, it's 129 times higher amount of disinfectant than what the EPA allows. 129 times. And the city is not saying a word about this to anyone. So we had gotten a gallon of this water, and I asked them to simply take these tubes and place one tube, take them out of the holster, and place one tube on each side of a gallon jug of water. And then take it in the next day to get it tested. So they did. And the lab called and said, we're going to need another sample. And the person asked, why is that? And they said, because something has gone wrong with the testing. Now, this person had already brought in 3 prior tests, and there were no problems with the testing. But now, suddenly, there's a problem with the testing.
Yeah, because they
And
can't find any bacteria. It must be the testing that's
another
wrong. It
sample.
can't be there's no bacteria in the water.
Not only that, but the water in the first sample was cloudy and had an odor. And now they're finding this water is crystal clear and has no odor. And so the second question, which was a tip off of what they were really wanting to know, and they said, where did you get this sample? So the same woman brings in 4 samples of water, each time telling them this came from my home, except the 4th time. And the 4th time, she didn't say where she got it. And they asked, where did you get this sample? Because it was unlike any of the other samples she had brought in. So we're doing follow-up testing now. We're beginning to work with one of our country's top toxicologists to prove that we can, in fact, eliminate even bacteria in water. Not only bacteria, but chlorine-resistant bacteria. So just to point out just another illustration, this wasn't just a single fluke incident. I've got a call from someone in, excuse me, in Oklahoma who had a well that was contaminated with bacteria. So they doused it heavily with chlorine and had another test. And they said, well, you've cut down on the amount of bacteria, but it's still loaded. You can't drink this water. So they wanted to know if the water tubes would help, but they didn't have the water tubes yet. But they did have one of these, the Balancer. So they took a water bottle, emptied it, filled it with this well water, and then headed for the laboratory. On the way, they set the bottle of water on top of a Balancer. That's all they did. It was 30 to 45 minutes away from the lab, so that's the treatment time. And the lab called back, said it was completely clean, no bacteria at all. So once again, this was chlorine-resistant bacteria, and it was completely eliminated with this technology. So we are starting to, this coming Saturday, this is Tuesday, Saturday, we're starting to work with the man who tests the water when they're establishing a new water tower. I don't know if people are familiar with water towers, but that's what gives you your pressure in your home.
Yeah,
So
flatland water supplies.
yes, yes. So the idea being that they fill up this water tower and it's vertical. So there's a downward pressure on the water that's in the existing pipe, the main pipe. As that water flows out to the customers, there's no need for any water to be added from the tower. But during a peak usage period, maybe in the middle of the day, factories are running, people have their laundry going, whatever. Peak usage periods, they find that the water tower will supply that gap. And so it really comes down to supply and demand. If there's enough supply in the pipe, then the water tower just remains full. But if there's a reduction, then it supplies that gap. So what we're looking at now is, can we affect the water in that tower? Can we affect the water in the pipe? These are very large pipes, so it might take something larger than this, but that's where we're headed. And we're working starting Saturday with the gentleman who has been for 30 years testing water for water towers.
Yeah, well,
Wow.
I would be interested in hearing what happened with that 10-year-old girl who had recurring bladder infections for which she was treated with antibiotics how many times?
30 times in 42 months is my understanding. So just imagine that. So we since it's a 10-year-old girl, it's rather difficult to say, here, we want you to wear one of these little bead packs. And so we were trying to figure out another solution. So I suggested that they take 4 of these tubes out of the holster and simply attach them to the 4 corners of her bed. She hasn't had a single UTI since then. I
Wow.
don't, yes. So um, to be a little bit more specific, we had a call from someone in Switzerland. It was a 25 plus year friend of mine who had from Mexico who had met and married a man from Switzerland. She was in Switzerland visiting the in-laws and called to say that the father-in-law was battling a terminal illness and wanted to know what he needs. And I said, well, he needs the waterworks tubes for the water pipe and uh, the balancer to keep in his pocket, and then a couple of additives for the water.
Come on,
Just
Fred,
drink.
name names. This is not,
Okay.
this is
One of,
protected by the privacy of our membership.
okay. One of them is called electrolyte. It's a fulvic acid based product, and the other one is called alkalize. Both of these products also have been tested because of their high energy, and it's because of things that we have done to manipulate and increase that energy. So, at any rate, I got a call back and they said that they're objecting to the water tubes. They live high in the Swiss Alps. They have a well. They don't even filter the water, it's so pure. Why do they need these tubes? And I said, well, they've got good water. Now they can have structured water. 3 weeks later, I got a call back and they said, we don't have any scale. Well, people don't think about that, but when you have mountain water, it's going to have a lot of minerals in it from the rock of the mountain. And so it presents a good influence on health, but it presents a horrible influence on scale, water spots, the buildup in your hot
Right.
water, all those things.
Yeah.
And
The
so
line.
they were reporting that just after 3 weeks they had no more scale. So 2 months later, I got a phone call and they said we had the water tested at a laboratory using radionics, which is a form of energetic testing. And to their surprise, the lab called back and said, where did you, what kind of filtration system do you use? We don't normally see water this clean. They
Wow.
were testing for the residual energies, the frequencies from contaminants. They found 84 contaminants. This is um, the energy, the homeopathic effect of chemicals and other forms of pollution. So when you put the tubes, or when they installed the tubes on the pipe, they then had another sample tested, and it only showed a minor trace of 4 things. So 80 things disappeared. All right. So the I guess the number one thing you would think is, wow, this is pretty amazing. These tubes eliminated 80 things. But the bigger picture, what you should really be focused on is how did 84 contaminants get into Swiss mountain water? The most common answer is it was snow that came down from the sky and picked up pollution in the air. So even being in the high Alps of Switzerland wouldn't necessarily mean you didn't have industrial pollution blowing in from other parts of the world. But
Yeah,
in reality, it goes back to what Martin said. The pollution was already there. It was in the water that evaporated and became snow. Remember, we had water
Right.
tested, double distilled water, and it still showed the energy of all the contaminants that were no longer chemically present,
Yeah,
could not be detected by a laboratory.
yeah. This is the same story that we hear from National Geographic that went around the world testing for glyphosate and other herbicides and pesticides and found it in the umbilical cord blood all over the planet, including north reaches of Alaska, where nothing is grown, where no biologicals, pesticides or herbicides should be applied because there's no agriculture there. Still, they found it in the cord blood of freshly born child.
Yes. So I'll mention this if it's okay. Nurse Bonnie put together a website. Now it's perfectly legal. She has First Amendment protection. She doesn't sell anything. She doesn't take orders. She has no connection to me whatsoever as far as financially gaining from doing this. But she put together a website, and it's simply nursebonnie.me, Bonnie, nursebonnie.me.
Yep.
On that website, if you pull up the page Water Science, this Swiss water test is there. And you can see that there were heavy metals, farm chemicals, antibiotics, hormones, and even radioactive materials were detected in that water from the Swiss Alps. This was startling to everyone that has seen this. They're completely shocked that there's no safe place that you can find water anymore. There just isn't.
Right.
If you can't find it in Swiss mountain snow, then there is no place, in my opinion. But not to worry, we have, excuse me, we have the solution. Excuse me, I need a drink of water, sorry.
I have one other question for you, Fred, which reminded me. There was a story about a person suffering from dementia who had these water tubes not in her room, just immediately outside of her room. Do you remember that story?
Yes.
Please share.
So it's the same lady who has a 10-year-old daughter who had these recurring UTI infections. She also, her and her husband were taking care of his mother, who was suffering Alzheimer's, but hers was pretty severe. It's what they determined was terminal. And so she was in essentially, they call it palliative care, but it's essentially hospice care. And the doctor that was in charge of this patient was viewing the patient with Zoom calls ever since COVID. And then because of the deterioration of the patient, she was basically bedridden. More details, the woman was limited to only 2 words. She couldn't speak other than just 2 words. She was incontinent. She was also uncooperative. She was angry. She didn't know what was going on with her, and it made her angry. And so the husband and the wife had ordered the tubes to put on their water pipe, but because of the construction of their house, they were going to have to go into the yard and dig up a hole to get to the incoming pipe. And so in the meantime, because of the weather, they had laid this set of tubes, just like you're seeing it in my hand. They laid that in a basket on a chair outside the door of the mother's bedroom. It was probably late afternoon, early evening when they put the tubes outside the door. Very early in the morning, the husband is waking up his wife, alarmed. She's thinking that the mother-in-law passed away. And he's saying, I heard her talking. They go into the bedroom, and the mother-in-law had the television on, and she was talking to the television in full sentences.
Wow.
So then they gave her the little bead pack so she could have it on her all the time. And within another day, so it was a total of 2 days, and she's no longer incontinent, and her personality has completely changed. She's now a very pleasant person, actually a happy person. And so it was a complete 180-degree turnaround. The doctor who's in charge of her, a medical doctor, saw this on a Zoom call immediately after this happened. And she said, I want these products for all my patients. I don't even care about research or other testing, formal testing that you have done. I just want these for all my patients. I've never seen anything like this, didn't even know it was possible. Since then, we've had at least 3 other people who had severe Alzheimer's or dementia, however you want to categorize it, and they've all responded within 2 days. Completely turned around their ability to speak. Ironically, one of the people was this chiropractor who I'd been working with, his own sister, another chiropractor. And she was now retired, but she had a problem. She had a rare form of dementia, and for the past 8 years, she was pretty well out of it. She was still able to do some things to take care of herself. She was married, had a husband. She was, I'm trying to remember now, about 75 years old. And so her husband had brought her, they lived out of state. Her husband had brought her to visit, um, the husband had brought her to visit her brother at his chiropractic office. And she was sitting in a room with a coloring book. Now, this was pretty sad. Here's a woman who had become a doctor and now was reduced to a child's coloring book. And so he walked by the room and he said to her, I'm going to give you an adjustment as soon as I finish up with my other patients. And she didn't even look up from her coloring book. He passed by the same room again a little while later, and she looked up from her coloring book and she said, are you ready for me yet? Now, what was the change? She had gotten a balancer. And then the doc decided to put these 2 liquid mineral products into her drinking water, and he gave her a bottle of water the day before. This was the following day, and he was giving her another bottle of water. And as he was handing it to her, she said, did you put the minerals in there? Now, here's someone who was not coherent, that within 2 days of getting the water, getting the proper water, and getting this little Balancer bead pack, this woman is coming out of this brain fog. And again, we've seen this duplicated in more than one case. So now we're preparing. Hopefully, this next week we'll get the ball rolling. Actually, working with this medical doctor and getting these products to other patients. So this is a very
yeah.
Yes, this is a very exciting time for us.
To be continued. I'm going to interview you in 3 months from now to see if you have now thousands of installations and hundreds of recovered brain foggers.
Yes. Yes, we have some agricultural applications. We have ponds. We have a 3-acre pond in Missouri. The water is very clear now, no algae at all, and algae used to be a big problem. We have a well also in Missouri. They have a big problem with sulfur in wells and groundwater in Missouri. Installed it on a home with really bad, and for those of your listeners who don't know, the sulfur causes a rotten egg smell and taste in the water. They installed these 4 tubes. All they did was put these around the pipe in the house coming from the well. Never touched the well, never touched the water. They turned on the kitchen faucet, and in 7 minutes, there was no longer any smell, no longer any taste. this is pretty
That's
remarkable.
fast, Fred.
Yeah,
That is fast.
that's very fast. Yeah, and it remains sulfur free to this day. So, and that
How,
wasn't the only one. We've had others, so it's not a fluke, is what I'm trying to say. It has
right,
been
right.
duplicated.
So do the tubes last forever?
They
Do they
really
need to
do.
be,
Yes,
okay.
we actually use. You've seen it in Home Depot and Lowe's. It's called PEX tubing, and then we have this um, coating. It's an application that they use for marine electrical connections. So it's a rubberized coating that is like a tube, and we slide it over this other tube after we filled it and sealed it, and then we heat shrink it. So it's actually glued and attached, uh, shrunk to fit the tube exactly. All right. The reason that's important is number one, it'll help it last forever. This is just going on your water pipe. There's no moving parts. It's just sitting there.
Right, right.
There's no reason for it to ever deteriorate. Um, even then, it's completely sealed so that it can never leak or air get into. I mean, it's completely sealed up, permanent structure. We believe that it will last indefinitely. And the cool thing about it is because of the Velcro attachment I mentioned on the back of it, you can actually, let's say, my wife and I went to spend the winter in Key West a few years ago. We didn't have it then, but if we had had it, we could have taken it to that house we stayed in Florida. Just unhook it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Velcro.
Yeah,
Take it
it's
loose and
totally,
take it.
totally portable.
Yes, yes. Okay. So the 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 greatest excitement that we have now is to take these tubes and actually put them in the corners of a room. And we are getting more and more feedback about that. But uh, lately, one of the latest reports was from a parent who has two sons, and both of them, for whatever reason, are having difficulty sleeping. And I said, here, take four of these tubes and put them in the corners of the bedroom of one child. And the first night, he was sleeping better already, just one night. So we're getting a lot of feedback like that. If I can have one more minute, Martin, we wondered if this would have any effect on other things, and so we've got an electrical engineer who he's not the only one, but an electrical engineer who's taken two of these tubes and put them inside of his fuse box, and it has reduced his electric consumption.
That's
That's
really,
huge. That's huge. We
yeah.
have
That's strange.
we have a we have a guy that owns several small engine airplanes, and he flew down to meet me and pick up some products. And walking out to the plane, he said, "Would this have any effect on the fuel?" And I said, "I believe so, but I don't have any proof." This was Labor Day last year, so it's been a little over a year. He said, "What do I do with them?" And I said, "Well, how does the fuel get to the engine?" He said, "There's a tank in each wing, and then it comes down to a center tank in the floorboard, a little, very small tank. And then a fuel line goes out to the engine." And I said, "Do you have access to that little tank?" And he said, "Yes." So he opened up this panel on the floorboard and literally just stuck these in there and laid them on this tank. It was I believe, a 3.5 hour flight. And he called back after refueling the plane after they arrived back at the destination airport. He said that reduced the fuel consumption by 4 to 5 gallons per hour. They went from 12.5 gallons per hour to 7.5. And so we're
Wow.
doing testing now to see if restructuring the fuel will have the same effect as it does with the water. And so far, the preliminary results are yes, in fact, it does.
Yeah. I think you're going to have to send me another set so I can put it into my gasoline-hungry V6 something in my driveway, see if it will improve its performance.
Yes. So we had, I have one customer who bought 5 of these, and to save space in mailing, I sent them in a bubble envelope, but I first put them into a vacuum seal bag. And so all of them were protected, all of them in one block, if you will. And he was riding around in his big diesel truck, and he was sitting on it because he said his lower back was hurting and he thought it would help with the pain. He arrived at the fuel station and he took that 5-pack of these little balancers and wrapped it around the fuel hose as right below the pump handle as he was filling it with diesel fuel. And he reported back it went from 15 to 20 miles to the gallon.
Hmm.
So we're just beginning to get these kind of reports. So of course we're going to do further investigation, but it's very, very promising that we're able to not only with this, the waterworks, but also with this, we're able to restructure things.
Fred, are those two things the same? Like
They're the
is
same,
what's in
just
the
different packages. The
okay, that's I thought
contents
so. I
are
just
the
wanted to
same.
confirm that.
Yes, yes.
So if someone was like a tennis player and they had tennis elbow, wrapping the balancer around their elbow could possibly help relieve the pain.
Remember the man Keith with the stroke and the heart problem. He just had it laying on his chest.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
I have my own story to tell you, you know. I
Oh,
put
let's
out,
hear it, Martin. What's your story?
well, you know, I had a problem with my SI joint, that's sacroiliac joint, that's at the back between your spine and your pelvis, and it was hurting because I torqued and I just parked this thing in the belt of my pants, right? Just that's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So I put it there, and 2 days later, I'm good. I'm bendable, flexible, pain-free again.
Awesome.
that's awesome.
So it does help. Although, you know, I have this on me a lot. So theoretically, I should have never had that pain in the first place. So this does not make me perfect. It's
Well,
it's not a
uh,
constant,
yeah,
constant
we,
eliminate every problem there is.
yeah, um, it's not a shield, so you can still hurt yourself. You can still torque your back
Yeah.
out of alignment. But here's an interesting thing. The same chiropractor I was mentioning, he started telling all of his patients they need to have one of these along with the adjustment. So he had a man come in carrying a cane. He had a walker at home, but this is a man who's crippled up. He gave him an adjustment, and a few days later, the man he walked out carrying his cane. A few days later, he was back walking with the cane. Chiropractor adjusted him again. This time, he sent him out the door with a little bead pack, and the guy turned that cane into firewood. He doesn't need it
Hmm.
anymore. The walker went to the garage. So we're having these stories consistently with people. Now, the chiropractor said that when he adjusts people, because of his technique, they hold longer than other types of chiropractic adjustment. But he said if they'll get the balancer and wear that in their pocket, they hold their adjustment indefinitely. That's huge.
Yeah. He's going to have one thriving practice.
It's so he started losing patients in the beginning. They would come in, get an adjustment, get a bead pack, and they were gone. But then his office phone started ringing off the wall as new patients started coming who saw the guy without his cane and said, "What happened?" He said, "I've got this bead pack." So it increased his business in the long term.
That's a
Absolutely.
great story, because so often we hear about people that they just want to like fix part of the problem so that it's like over and over and over again. And they never think that if word of mouth is so important, and if they actually do take someone from not really very good to really, really good, um, that they're going to tell 10 or 20 or 30 people, and those people are going to be coming around saying, I want the same thing because I saw that guy before and I
Yeah,
see him now.
Yeah,
yeah.
I would say that there's a very large, almost endless supply of people with health problems.
Yes.
Do you know of any?
Yep,
Would you help me get this out to other people?
I will try,
Yeah.
Fred.
Well, that's all we need.
Yeah. Well,
There is a
it's in stock, so
yeah.
we don't need to beat this situation any further. I
Oh,
don't
yeah, we
know. I
do.
mean, we could probably hear 20 more stories,
Yeah.
but
No, I don't want to hear any more stories, but I do want to talk to Fred and you, Martin, about a couple things. One is, as Martin knows, we have a group of fibromyalgia sufferers who have had fibromyalgia from 1 month to
20.
70 years, and they're in constant pain. So if someone came up to you and said, you know, my whole body is in pain, I was traumatized as a youth, which is part of it. I eat bad, that's part of it. All the other things that, you know, toxicity and everything else. What would you say to that person if they were open-minded and willing to try?
I'm so happy to hear you ask about fibromyalgia because it's a mystery illness, isn't it?
It
I mean,
is.
it's misdiagnosed. Doctors really don't understand. Um, I could have a guest on the next show to give a testimony. This is a surgical nurse who had fibromyalgia so bad that she would come home from the hospital and go to bed. This was
Wow.
her life. My wife and I met her and her husband in our first conversation. They asked, "What do you guys do?" And we told them. And then they revealed that the wife has severe fibromyalgia. It was one afternoon she came to visit my wife at my wife had an office at that time. Came to visit my wife, and she was on the second floor, and this woman walked up the steps and collapsed on the couch in my wife's office. And my wife said, "Here, I'm going to help you out." And she fixed her a bottle of water with our liquid mineral products in it. This was before the balancer, but we already knew about the energy, and we knew that our liquid mineral product had a very high energy. That was really the beginning, the influence of coming up with this balancer and the waterworks. And so she gave her a bottle of water with the minerals in it. The lady drank about half of the bottle and left and went home. This was on a Friday. On Saturday, her husband comes home from work, and his wife, who is normally in bed, is now exercising on the treadmill. And the
Wow.
husband couldn't believe it. Literally within 24 hours, she was healed. I did a meeting giving a presentation about my products at that time. Um, this lady showed up. And at the end of the meeting, I said, "Does anybody have any questions?" And she raised her hand. She said, "Can I give a testimonial?" And told the story of how in 24 hours she was completely pain free. Okay, I'm not suggesting that every person is going to be pain free overnight, but we didn't even have the balancer at that time. We, we're way, way, way far advanced from that. I only tell that story to give people hope that it is possible. Since that time, we've had people recover anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks, completely healed of fibromyalgia. So to me, it's number one, it's a lack of this energy that the acupuncturists talk about. It's also mineral deficiency coupled with dehydration. And it's
Right.
very important that the minerals be in the water. So if anybody has fibromyalgia, there is hope, plenty of hope.
the
So
minerals
you
you're
said
talking
the
about, Fred,
minerals need to be in the water. So how do I
Yeah.
know the mineral? Like, will the balancer put the minerals in the water, or like,
No, it'll add energy to whatever minerals are in the water, and
okay.
that's a good point because I didn't mention that part of it. One of the things that helped me to understand where this energy comes from that the acupuncturists talk about, for 5,000 plus years, they've been using acupuncture. And even in modern times, they have no explanation about where this energy comes from. The research I've done has pointed to something that you were born with. That's it. And as I said earlier, this just wasn't a good enough explanation. And I really believe, and I'm going to say this out loud, I really believe the Lord had led me to this discovery that the energy is in minerals. But
Hmm.
it has to be minerals that were not adulterated by other things. So let's say, for example, uh, there's a company that gathers minerals from the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Those were minerals that were in water, but now you've taken them out of the water. When you measure the energy, there's very little energy with those minerals. So, what am I talking about? Minerals are in the earth. There are our whole planet. I mean, we have rock. You can go anywhere on the planet and dig down and you're going to hit rock. All right. So there's different kinds of rock. But all of our earth is made up of rock. And we have little particles of those rocks that get into our food supply, get into our water supply, and these are what we have for minerals. But there's a vast difference between minerals that are just um, pulled out of a dead lake versus minerals that are pulled out of a living plant. And the
Hmm.
difference has to do with the other constituents. So I mentioned vitamin C earlier. Well, vitamin C is wonderful by itself, but if you have bioflavonoids that were also occurring with, let's say, the orange, along with vitamin C, there was also bioflavonoids. So if you take vitamin C without the bioflavonoids, you just don't get the same benefit. The same thing with minerals. When you find them in a plant, they're always located in with other nutrients or other things, traces of amino acids, traces of enzymes, traces of vitamins. All of these things occur along with minerals in the plant. But
Right.
interestingly enough, the minerals were in the soil. They were part of this giant, as some people call it, a giant magnet. We have a North Pole and a South Pole. They call it a giant magnet. So we even have examples of magnetite. It's a magnetic rock that you can find. Okay, so just because a piece of magnetite became magnetic doesn't mean that all of the other rocks weren't picking up any energy from this giant magnet. They were, but because
Right.
of their molecular structure, it was different. So you could take a piece of magnetite theoretically and rub it on a piece of iron and turn the iron into a weak magnet. So you can transfer this energy from one substance to another. Okay, but the iron is still iron, but it also now has energetic properties of a magnet. Okay, so what if all of the minerals that are in the soil were collecting energy from the earth itself? They were taken up into the liquid or the juice inside of a plant through the roots, and now they're circulating up to the leaves, and in the leaves they're exposed to the sun, the energy of the sun, radiation, if you will, of the sun. And that's another kind of energy. Both of those types of energies now are attached to these minerals. So that's why you're going to get a lot more benefit if you get your nutrients and your minerals from whole foods rather than from a bottle of pills from the health food store. Now, it's not to say that you can't get some benefit from ground up rock in a capsule. What I'm saying is this energy that you have, this energy that the acupuncturists talk about, it is reinforced, it's replenished, it's built up if you're getting minerals that have high energy because that's where it comes from. Okay. So we discovered that, and then we also were able to enhance our mineral product to have a higher energy.
Now,
So
it's
all
Fred, you keep talking in circles around it, but you're talking about fulvic and humic acid, are you not?
Yes, but fulvic more than humic, but yes,
Good.
yes, yes. But there are a lot of different deposits, and this was something that took me a long time to figure out.
Right.
I went out to Utah to see some of the humate mines where they get the raw materials to make the fulvic acid.
Right.
And I was so surprised. I didn't see men crawling in and out of a hole in the ground. I saw bulldozers. They can scrape back the topsoil in some places, and there's the deposit.
Yeah.
What we source is from a private landowner who found a humate deposit deep underground on this property, and it was beneath a layer of sandstone. So it was literally sealed in a stone vault since the time of Noah's flood.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it not only contains minerals grown, minerals that were part of plants grown in mineral-rich soil, but they also had a higher energy than what we have now, and also they were sealed off from modern pollution. So we think it's the best source in the world, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we use it in our store. I know. I'm familiar with it.
Okay, great.
All right. I think this story has gone a bit over time, but it's worth telling.
Yes.
Scott, any closing comments?
No, I think it's really exciting, and I ordered a balancer as we were talking.
All right, awesome.
So I hope
Fred,
Martin sends it to me tomorrow.
Hopefully, yeah.
Fred, it's an
Well,
absolute
I
delight.
have sore knees, so I'm going to be putting it on my one knee, and I'm going to see the difference and document it, and then I'll give you a testimonial on it.
All right, we'll do that on the next call.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's a delight. We'll share it with the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you, Scott, for joining us, and we'll do this again real soon.
All right.
Yeah, nice meeting you, Fred.
This is the Life Enthusiast Health Shots podcast, private member issue, not for public consumption. Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you, Scott. This is Martin Patel.
God bless.
And we're restoring vitality to you and the planet.
My body's a temple, but the walls are cracked. Stuck in the rubble of the years I've stacked. Stagnation in my veins like a river turned to dust. Toxic whispers in the wind, but I gotta rebuild. I must.